My name's Mark. I'm 51, and for the last 8 years I've lived in a small town just outside of Minneapolis. The kind of place where the snow pile's high enough to erase fences, and people hide behind drawn curtains half the year. After my divorce, I told myself I was ready to rebuild. Ready to try again. That's when I met Jenna. She was steady, practical, with a voice that carried both calm and warning. She had a son, 17 then, named Dylan. His biological father had vanished before the boy turned 5. A ghost that existed only in grainy photos and fragments of stories told through clenched teeth. When I came in, I didn't do it halfway. I stepped fully into their world, not as a guest, not as a weekend presence, but as something solid. I showed up for everything. School runs, practice pickups, oil changes, repairs. I spent weekends painting their house while Dylan stayed in his room with the door shut. When the gutters clogged, I climbed the ladder. When the car died, I fixed it. When the bills piled up, I covered them. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was just building the kind of stability I never had. First, Dylan met me with silence. Not anger silence. A weapon sharper than shouting. He'd eat dinner with his earbuds in, nod through my questions, and retreat upstairs before I'd finished talking. I told myself it was normal. Teenagers keep their distance. Takes time. If I kept showing up, consistency would break through the walls. Sometimes, Jenna would smile and say, "You brought us real stability." I believed her. I needed to, because stability felt like purpose, and purpose was the only thing that got me through the long Minnesota winters. But stability is not love. And stability is not gratitude. For years, I carried that house on my back. Every bill had my name on it. The groceries, the heat, the repairs, all from my paycheck. Dylan got new shoes before I did. His room got painted before mine. Every sacrifice I made was quiet, invisible, the kind of devotion that expects nothing but recognition. But recognition never came. Sometimes on Sundays I'd cook breakfast for everyone, eggs, bacon, pancakes, the works. Dylan would come down, grab a plate, and eat in the living room. No thanks. No acknowledgement. Just the glow of his phone reflected in his eyes. Jenna would shrug it off. "He's a teenager, Mark. They're all like that." But not all teenagers live off another man's paycheck. I told myself patience was the price of family. But patience has an expiration date. It was a Tuesday night when the crack finally appeared. Small at first, then splitting everything open. I'd been trying to talk to Dylan about college. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table. The house was quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, half a smirk on his face. I asked him what schools he was considering. He didn't answer right away, just looked at me with a calmness that felt deliberate. Then he said, "You're just renting your place here. You're nobody." I thought I'd misheard him. The words hung in the air like frost. Simple, casual, but they carried years of contempt. Every rolled eye, every ignored greeting, every unspoken reminder that I was not his blood. I looked at Jenna, waiting, expecting, hoping, but she just looked away. Not angry, not shocked, just tired. As if she'd seen this moment coming and decided long ago that silence was easier than confrontation. That silence said everything. I was paying for everything, the food, the house, the car insurance, even Dylan's phone bill. And yet, somehow, I was still a stranger in my own home. I tried to explain it later after Dylan went to bed. I told Jenna how deeply that sentence cut, how it wasn't just disrespect. It was erasure. She poured herself a glass of wine, leaned against the counter and said, "He's just a teenager, Mark. He doesn't mean it." But he did. He meant every syllable. You can hear it when someone speaks from truth, even an ugly one. I stood there, watching her sip her wine like nothing had happened, and realized I had spent 8 years mistaking endurance for love. I thought that if I kept giving, kept showing up, they would eventually see me. But the truth was colder. I was there because I was useful. And the moment I stopped being useful, I would disappear. That's what the boy was really saying. You don't belong here. You're not one of us. It's a strange thing, to realize you've built your life inside someone else's house of mirrors. Every reflection warped, every act of love invisible. I went to bed that night, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint buzz of the heater. I tried to tell myself that one cruel sentence shouldn't undo years of work. But it did, because that sentence wasn't born in the moment. It had been growing quietly, under every polite nod and every look away. It was the truth finally saying itself aloud. Couldn't sleep. I got up, walked through the house, past the photos I'd paid to frame, the furniture I'd built, the couch where Dylan had sprawled for years watching TV on the streaming accounts I paid for. The house was full of my labor but empty of my name. That's when I understood what real loneliness looks like. It's not being alone. It's being surrounded by people who benefit from your existence while pretending you're replaceable. The next morning, I went to work like nothing had happened, smiled at coworkers, sent emails, but every word, every number I typed, felt heavier because I knew who it was all for. Not me. Not really. I was earning for people who saw me as a temporary fixture. That night, Jenna called me from the living room. She wanted to talk about a vacation Dylan had been asking about, some trip for his senior year. I listened, nodded, agreed to look into it. But something in me had already gone quiet. That night, I realized that giving without acknowledgement isn't generosity. It's servitude. Still, I didn't act. Not yet. I watched. I waited. I wanted to see if there was anything left worth saving. A few days later, I came home to find Dylan in the driveway, arguing on his phone. He was shouting at someone, probably a friend, saying he couldn't hang out because the guy who pays for everything is being weird lately. The guy. That's all I was. The guy who paid. He didn't notice me standing there. And maybe that was the moment I stopped wanting to be noticed. That night, Jenna came to bed late. I pretended to be asleep. She slipped under the covers and sighed. Not the kind of sigh that means peace, but the one that means resignation. She didn't touch me. Neither of us said a word. The space between us felt like a canyon carved over years of small betrayals and quiet avoidance. Lying there, I thought about every version of fatherhood I had ever imagined. The one that builds, teaches, sacrifices. The one that earns respect through example. I thought I was living that. But all I had done was make everyone comfortable enough to forget I was human. It's a slow kind of death, being needed but never valued. And yet, there's a strange clarity that comes when you finally accept how people see you. When the illusion breaks, it doesn't shatter, it dissolves. The warmth drains out of you, replaced by something colder, simpler, resolve. So I made a decision, quietly, without anger, without ceremony. I decided to stop pretending that love could grow in the soil of someone else's indifference. Because the truth was simple. I had built their comfort, brick by brick, dollar by dollar. And now I would see what happened when I stopped holding the walls up. The next morning I woke before dawn. The house was still, blue with early light, and for once, that silence felt like something I owned. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee going cold, staring at the bills stacked neatly by the toaster, each one a monument to how thoroughly I had supported people who thought I was temporary. Every envelope carried proof of my servitude. The electric bill, the car insurance, the grocery receipts. 8 years of proof. 8 years of financing a fantasy. By 7, I had made up my mind. No arguments. No drama. Just action. The house we lived in wasn't ours. It belonged to an old friend of mine, Greg, a man I'd known since my 20s. When Jenna and I moved in, it was me who signed the lease, me who paid every cent of rent. She never even spoke to Greg. I handled it all. That morning I called him. He sounded half asleep. "Hey, Mark," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said. "Just wanted to give you notice. I'll be out by the end of the month." A pause. "Out? What happened?" "Just time," I told him. "Things change." He didn't press. We'd known each other too long for that. He just said, "Got it. I'll start looking for someone new." When I hung up, something in my chest loosened. It wasn't joy, it was release. The kind that comes when you finally stop holding your breath after years of pretending you weren't suffocating. Jenna came downstairs an hour later, robe tied loosely, still yawning. She poured herself coffee, smiled absently, the same smile she'd given me every morning for years. I watched her stir sugar into the mug and wondered how someone could look so at peace while standing in the ruins of a man's patience. "I gave notice," I said. She froze. "What do you mean?" "We're moving out at the end of the month." The spoon clinked against the mug. "What are you talking about? We can't just—" "I can," I interrupted quietly. "The lease is in my name." Her eyes searched mine, looking for the usual softness, the hesitation she had learned to count on. But it wasn't there. "Mark, you can't do this," she said. "Dylan's got school. I've got work." I cut her off again. "You told me he's just a teenager. Let him adapt." That hit her. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just explained the facts, calm, factual, unshakable. "I'm ending the lease, Jenna. I'm returning the keys. And when the month ends, the house ends with it. I'm done financing people who treat me like a placeholder." She stared at me, disbelief turning slowly into panic. "What about Dylan? He's a kid." "He's 17, I said. "Old enough to know what he said, and old enough to live with it." I walked past her, into the living room, and started collecting my things. The toolbox, the framed photo from my old workshop, the watch my father gave me before he died. She followed, voice trembling. "You're overreacting." "Am I?" I turned to face her. "He told me I was nobody. You said nothing. Tell me, Jenna, what does that make me?" She didn't answer. She just looked at the floor, as if guilt could hide there. That afternoon, I made the rest of the calls. Utilities, bank accounts, the shared debit card I'd opened for groceries and emergencies. Gone. Streaming services, insurance, all the quiet conveniences that made their lives seamless. One by one, I shut them down. By evening, it was done. Every wire that connected me to their comfort had been cut. Jenna didn't speak to me that night. She moved through the house like a ghost, avoiding eye contact, checking her phone as if waiting for someone. Maybe Dylan's father, to materialize and fix everything. But ghosts don't return when they're needed. They never do. The next day, Dylan came home from school, earbuds in, head down. He didn't notice anything at first, the missing credit card on the counter, the disconnected Wi-Fi. But when his gaming console blinked out mid-session, the anger came. "Internet's down," he shouted from his room. "I know," I called back. He appeared in the doorway, eyes sharp with annoyance. "Well, fix it." I looked up from the table. "No." He blinked, as if the word confused him. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean it's not my problem anymore." Jenna appeared behind him, already defensive. "Mark." "No," I said again. "Not this time." That's when the realization hit them both. Slow, dawning, dreadful. I wasn't bluffing. Over the next few days, the house began to decay in small, poetic ways. The heating sputtered because I hadn't renewed the service. The fridge hummed too loud because the warranty had expired. Dylan's phone plan, which had always been under my account, went dark. Every comfort they had mistaken for stability was evaporating, one automated payment at a time. Dylan shouted. Jenna pleaded. I stayed quiet. When Jenna finally confronted me, it was after midnight. She stood in the doorway, hair unkempt, her face streaked with the kind of anger that only comes from fear. "You're destroying everything," she said. "No," I replied. "I'm just ending the illusion that it was ever mine to destroy. You're abandoning us." That one made me laugh. A quiet, bitter sound that didn't feel like mine. "I gave you 8 years, Jenna. Paid every bill, fixed every broken thing, carried you both through every storm. That's not abandonment. That's investment. And now I'm cashing out." Her eyes glistened, not with love, with guilt. "What do you expect me to do?" "Figure it out," I said. "The same way I always had to." Dylan slammed his door that night hard enough to rattle the walls. I didn't flinch. His anger wasn't power anymore. It was panic disguised as pride. I lay awake, listening to the creaks of the house, the sound of dependency cracking apart. I thought of every sacrifice I had made. The overtime hours, the vacations I skipped, the things I gave up so they could live comfortably. And it hit me, I had been less a father and more a foundation. Something you build upon, never thank, and eventually forget exists. In the morning, I found Dylan sitting on the steps, backpack at his feet. His eyes were red. "What are we supposed to do?" he asked quietly. I handed him the truth. "Live within your means." He looked at me as if I had spoken another language. I suppose for someone who'd grown up never hearing no. It might as well have been. Later, when I told my coworker Greg that I'd canceled the lease, he just nodded. "About time," he said. "You looked like a man waiting to drown." He wasn't wrong. By the third week, boxes started to appear in the living room. Jenna was packing. Slowly, angrily, like someone forced to accept gravity. I didn't help. I didn't argue. I just watched. Dylan tried to look indifferent, but every slam of his door carried the sound of a boy learning what consequence feels like. The night before the move, Jenna asked if I'd reconsider. Her voice was small now, stripped of its edge. "You really think this is fair?" she said. "No," I told her. "But fairness stopped mattering the night you looked away." She turned then, shoulders trembling. "He's just a boy." "No," I said. "He's a reflection of what you allowed." That was the last conversation we ever had that felt honest. The morning we left, the sky was gray. A typical Minnesota farewell. I stood in the doorway for a moment, looking at the house I'd filled with my labor. Every nail, every coat of paint, every repaired hinge. I thought about how much of myself was embedded in those walls, and how none of it had ever been seen. When I handed the keys back to Greg, he asked if I was okay. I told him yes. But the truth was, I didn't know what okay meant anymore. As I drove away, I didn't feel loss, just emptiness. But it wasn't the hollow kind. It was clean, like the moment after a fire when the smoke finally clears. They called later, Jenna first, then Dylan. I didn't answer. I owed them nothing more than the silence they once gave me. And for the first time in 8 years, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own story. I felt like a man waking up. A week passed before my phone lit up again with her name. Jenna. The message was short, almost polite at first. "You're not really going to leave us hanging, right? We can't handle all this. Not, I miss you. Not, let's talk." Just a plea wrapped in entitlement. I stared at it for a long time. The little typing bubble appeared, disappeared, then came back. She added another line. Dylan didn't mean what he said. He was angry. Please don't punish him for that. I could almost hear her voice, that soft, managerial tone she used when she wanted something fixed without acknowledging it was broken. For years I jumped at that tone. Now it felt like static. I didn't respond right away. I just set the phone down and looked around my new apartment. Sparse. Clean. One chair, one table, no echoes of anyone else's chaos. The quiet wasn't comfortable yet, but it was mine. That night I thought about everything I'd left behind. The bills, the furniture, the photo frames I'd bought but never appeared in. Every piece of that life still carried my name, yet none of it belonged to me. I opened my bank app and scrolled through transactions. Groceries, utilities, insurance. All of it gone now. Silent proof that I had once held their world together with automatic payments and unspoken sacrifice. The next morning, I answered her message with one sentence. "You said I was nobody. I'm just acting like one." No reply came for hours. Then another message, sharper this time. "You're being cruel. You know we can't afford everything right now." The same we that had erased me whenever it was convenient. I typed back. "Then maybe it's time you talk to Dylan's real father." That stopped the conversation cold. No dots, no response. Just silence. Days passed. The quiet should have felt like punishment, but it didn't. Felt like justice catching up. For the first time in years, my money stayed where it belonged. My evenings stretched without interruption. I cooked for one, ate in peace, and learned how heavy the word enough can feel when you finally reach it. But peace doesn't stay unchallenged. It always sends someone to test it. The test came through a mutual friend, Tim, who used to stop by our house for barbecues. He called one evening, his voice carrying that uneasy sympathy people use when they deliver gossip disguised as concern. "Mark, you're not going to believe this," he said. "Jenna and Dylan came by my office today. They were asking if I knew anyone reliable. Someone, steady. Like you." I laughed. Couldn't help it. "Reliable, huh?" "Yeah," he said. "They're looking for a new place to rent. Apparently she told Dylan you overreacted. Said you're just going through something." "Going through something?" I repeated, tasting the words. "Yeah, I guess I am. It's called clarity." He hesitated. "You sure you're okay, man?" "I'm fine," I said. "Better than I've been in years." When the call ended, I sat there for a long time, staring out the window at the city lights. Somewhere across town, they were probably packing boxes again, blaming me for the mess I'd simply stopped cleaning up. They weren't looking for a home. They were looking for another foundation to stand on. Another man to fund their comfort and absorb their silence. The thought didn't make me bitter. It made me laugh again. Not out of joy, but disbelief. For 8 years I had lived like an employee of their happiness, convinced that devotion would eventually buy me a seat at the table. Now I saw the truth. I was never part of the family business. I was the unpaid intern who kept the lights on. Still, there was one last thread to cut. Money leaves a trail, and I didn't want mine leading back to them. I started by checking the joint credit card. I had already frozen it, but there were pending charges, gas, groceries, subscription renewals, things I hadn't approved. I paid them off, closed the account, and cut the card in half. Next, I called the insurance company. Jenna and Dylan had been on my health plan since the beginning. Removing them took 10 minutes. 10 minutes to erase 8 years of coverage, late-night ER visits, prescriptions, and reassurance. The agent on the line asked, "Are you sure you want to terminate dependents?" "Yes," I said. "They're not dependent on me anymore." When I hung up, the silence in the room felt heavier than usual. But it wasn't regret. It was finality. A few days later, another text came, shorter this time. "You really want us to struggle? After everything?" I didn't answer, because the truth was brutal in its simplicity. I didn't want them to struggle. I wanted them to wake up, to feel the weight of the roof they'd mocked me for paying, to understand that every light switch, every meal, every tank of gas had been powered by the man they dismissed as irrelevant. They didn't see it yet, but their lives had always been built on invisible scaffolding, my labor. I was the quiet mechanic behind their illusion of stability. And now that I was gone, the structure was folding in on itself. The cracks appeared quickly. I heard about them through whispers, friends who couldn't resist sharing updates. Jenna had taken extra shifts at the clinic. Dylan had started skipping classes, trying to pick up part-time work. The comfort they once took for granted was dissolving. Did I feel satisfaction? Maybe a little, but it wasn't revenge. It was recognition, the universe finally balancing its own books. One night, I found myself scrolling through old photos on my phone. Dylan at 12, holding the bike I taught him to ride. Dylan at 15, grinning beside the doghouse we built together. For a second, something twisted inside me. The echo of what I once felt. Then I noticed the background in every photo. The house, the yard, the things I paid for. And I realized those memories weren't proof of love. They were receipts. I set the phone down. The next morning, Jenna texted again. This time it wasn't about money. It was about guilt. "You really think cutting us off makes you the bigger person? You're just proving Dylan right, you're nobody." That one almost made me smile, because it wasn't true anymore. For 8 years I had been their provider, their safety net, their silent witness. And now, by withdrawing, I had finally become something more powerful than a nobody. I had become absent. Absence teaches faster than lectures ever could. Still, part of me wondered if she believed what she'd written, or if it was just fear speaking. Fear of bills, of choices, of standing on her own. I wanted to tell her that I wasn't doing this out of spite. That sometimes the kindest thing you can do for people who never thank you is to stop giving them opportunities to take. But I didn't write that. Instead, I wrote, I'm not punishing you. I'm just letting you live by your own rules. No response. Just silence again. A few nights later, I ran into Greg at a bar downtown. He told me Jenna had been asking around, seeing if anyone would co-sign a new lease. I asked if she'd found someone. He shook his head. No one's volunteering. People know what happened. I nodded. Good. Maybe she'll finally see what it costs to build something alone. He studied me for a moment. You don't miss them? I thought about it. The laughter, the noise, the illusion of family dinners. I miss who I thought they were, I said. But that version only existed in my imagination. We clinked glasses. When I got home, I stood by the window of my small apartment and watched the lights of the city flicker like signals from another life. For the first time in nearly a decade, every bill in that place had my name and mine alone. Every plate, every chair, every silence mine. It wasn't joy that filled me. It was something quieter, something stronger, a realization. I hadn't left them behind. I had reclaimed myself. Because the truth is, when people treat your kindness like a service, the only way to teach them its value is to cancel the subscription. No gratitude, just bills. And now, finally, they were paying theirs. It's strange how quickly life simplifies when you stop financing other people's comfort. No more joint accounts. No reminders on the fridge. No silent expectations hanging over breakfast. Just air, cold, clean air that belonged to no one but me. For a while, I kept expecting guilt to show up. Didn't. What came instead was clarity, sharp, undeniable clarity. I woke up every morning to silence, and that silence began to feel like proof that I'd made the right choice. No footsteps stomping down the hall. No arguments over Wi-Fi. No teenage sighs heavy with contempt. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own breathing. Freedom doesn't roar. It whispers. At first, the world outside my apartment felt strange. Too open, too wide. I'd built my whole life around the role of provider, and now that job was gone. But emptiness, I learned, isn't always loss. Sometimes it's space being returned to you after years of being occupied. I filled that space slowly. Walks before sunrise. Coffee that stayed hot because no one interrupted me. Work without the ache of resentment. I started fixing things again. Not for anyone else, but for the quiet satisfaction of seeing order return where chaos once ruled. A loose cabinet hinge, a wobbly chair, small tasks that somehow rebuilt the rhythm of a man who had forgotten how to live for himself. Jenna called once more, maybe a month later. Her voice was calm, practiced. "We're managing," she said. "I'm glad," I replied. Then came the pause. The one that always preceded a question she didn't want to ask. "Dylan, he's having a rough time. He's been angry, confused. He says you gave up on him." I almost laughed. "He gave up on me first." "I know," she said quietly. "But he's still a kid." "He's 17, I corrected. Old enough to understand that words have weight. Another pause. "He misses you," she said. "No," I said softly. "He misses the version of me that paid for everything." She didn't deny it. We both knew the truth. After that, we spoke for a few more minutes, polite, distant, mechanical. Then she hung up and that chapter finally closed. I thought that was the end of it. But life has a way of circling back, testing whether your convictions are real or just performance. 2 months later, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something, maybe habit, maybe curiosity, made me answer. "Mark." It was Dylan. His voice was small, unfamiliar, stripped of its usual arrogance. "Yeah," I said. "It's me." There was a pause, the sound of traffic behind him. Then, "Can we talk?" I hesitated. The old instinct, the one that used to make me drop everything for him, tried to rise, but I pushed it down. "About what?" I didn't realize how much you did," he said. "I guess I took it for granted." "You guess." A soft exhale on the other end. "Yeah, Mom's been struggling. The bills, the house. It's different now." Different. That word carried more truth than he knew. "Dylan," I said quietly, The things you took for granted were what I bled for. Every bill you ignored, every meal you didn't thank me for, that was time I'll never get back. And when you said I was nobody, I believed you. Because for years, I'd let you live like I didn't exist. I didn't mean it, he said quickly. I was mad. You know how teenagers get. I do, I replied. But being a teenager doesn't excuse cruelty. He didn't speak after that. Just breathing, uneven, guilty breathing. For a second, I imagined him standing outside somewhere, shoulders hunched, trying to piece together what an apology costs when it comes too late. Listen, I said finally. I don't hate you. I never did. But there's a difference between love and servitude. I was the one fixing everything while being told I didn't belong. That's not family, Dylan. That's dependency dressed up as love. He whispered, I just want things to go back to how they were. I closed my eyes. They can't. You can't burn the bridge and then ask for directions across the river. Silence. Then the line clicked dead. I didn't call him back. That night, I sat on my balcony, beer in hand, watching the lights of the city flicker against the dark. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to buy a place in someone else's story. And for what? To be thanked once a year? To be tolerated between paychecks? I'd been living on the currency of hope, and the exchange rate had been cruel. People mistake kindness for obligation. They think generosity means ownership. But when you take a man's giving for granted long enough, you teach him that the only way to be seen is to stop giving. I realized something else too. I hadn't walked away from a family. I had escaped a contract I never signed. One where my effort was expected but never valued. Over the next few weeks, I started rebuilding quietly, not with people but with purpose. I fixed up an old truck, reconnected with an old friend from my construction days, started taking weekend jobs again, not because I needed the money, but because I missed the feeling of creating something that stayed built. Wood doesn't talk back. Metal doesn't lie. Sometimes, I'd catch myself wondering what Jenna and Dylan were doing, whether they'd learned anything, whether the silence I left behind had started to teach them what my words never could. Then I'd stop myself. Their lessons weren't my responsibility anymore. One evening, Tim called again. Heard from Jenna lately? He asked. No, I said. And I don't need to. Well, he said, you might want to know. Dylan dropped out of college. Said he's taking a break to work full-time. I let that sink in. A break. The euphemism for falling apart quietly. Guess reality finally showed up. I said. You don't feel bad? I thought about it. No. He's finally learning what I learned the hard way, that everything costs something. Tim didn't know what to say to that, so we changed the subject. That night, I slept better than I had in months. People talk about closure like it's a door you can shut with one clean motion. It's not. Closure is a series of quiet moments where you stop explaining yourself to people who never listened. I didn't leave that family out of spite. I left because staying had become a form of self-erasure. Every time I paid a bill, I erased a little more of myself. Every time I tolerated their silence, I rewrote my worth in smaller and smaller letters. Leaving wasn't an act of cruelty. It was an act of survival. Sometimes, liberation doesn't look like fireworks or freedom songs. It looks like sitting in a small apartment, alone, realizing the weight you carried was never love, just expectation disguised as need. Now, every time I hear someone say, family is everything, I think about the difference between blood and gratitude. Blood ties you, gratitude binds you. Without the second, the first is just biology. So no, I didn't leave. I liberated myself. From their silence. From my own guilt. From the lie that endurance equals love. Maybe they'll learn something from the emptiness I left behind. Maybe they won't. That's not my lesson to teach anymore. Was I wrong to walk away? Was I cruel to pull the plug on a comfort I built with my own hands? Or was I finally, after all these years, teaching them that saying you're nothing to someone who gave you everything comes with a price, and I'm not the one paying it anymore?